Hello everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and today we are going to be talking about war nickels, and I've been thinking about these from a beginner's perspective, or kind of from a silver stacking perspective, and want to share with you my opinions, because I think a lot of people are trying to figure out which is the best type of silver to stack, kind of what makes the most sense. I think often it's really what makes the most sense for them. I think that people kind of ignore the fact that there's different circumstances and different situations for everybody. And I am a big believer that, I'll just get this right out of the way, right out of the bat. I would say that most of the time, war nickels are not the best type of silver, especially if you're just going to go with one. But that for some people, they can certainly be the right choice. So we're going to be evaluating that, thinking through their pros, cons, advantages, disadvantages, all in this video. I'm going to try to do it pretty quickly, and like with all of my videos, it's helpful for other people to see other comments and other thoughts in the comments, so please leave your feedback there as well. So, like I said, it's going to be good for some people and bad for other people, and I just want to give you a bit of basic information on these coins. So, these are going to be 35% silver, and the big main pro to discuss is that you can often buy this at a very good discount. Often you can even buy these right at or below the melt price of the silver inside of these, and that all kind of goes back to that 35% silver content, the remainder being 9% manganese and 56% copper. So that's what you're working with kind of just as a foundation. And just to start, these were made 1942. They were made in Philadelphia and San Francisco. You can tell if you've got one because it's going to have the large mint mark above Monticello on the reverse of the coin. And these were made to conserve some of the metals to be used during the World War. So that was why they shifted and they used kind of silver, manganese as substitutes to fill in a bit more on the circulating coinage. But the result is that we have all this 35% silver. I think we can get into a con here. It's very challenging to melt these, or at least it's not as economic to melt them relative to doing the same on a 90% silver coin. They're a lot less recognizable in terms of what is the exact silver value inside. They don't really benefit from having from trading at a multiple of their face value. It's going to be kind of more of a game of looking up the silver price and then really understanding how that's going to affect what the ultimate sale price and what the ultimate pricing on these are going to be. But because of that, generally you can acquire a fair amount of silver, and especially a fair amount of US silver, at extremely low costs relative to other coins for the same amount of silver. There is a neat historical factor, I think, as well as it just being cool that these are probably some of the largest mint marks on US coins. I mean, it's very apparent. And I find that interesting. And then obviously a lot of people really like history in coins, that as being kind of part of why they enjoy collecting coins. And I think that these fit in as sort of being something historic to look back on and to kind of remember a very visible and tangible reminder of our history as a country. There is a good potential for errors. I've got a video on it, but there's a lot of repunched mint marks. The quality control on these was really not the best, so there's a fair amount of double dyes, some overdates, and then you can also definitely look for coins that were off metal. So there's a very limited number of coins that have a large mint mark. That was what was used to signify that these were the war nickels. There's very few of them, but they're very valuable when those are actually copper. So if something looks off, generally even when they're worn down, like we can see some of the the war nickels in this album, they kind of have a different color, kind of maybe more of a lead dull color versus the relatively worn other nickels from that time period, but on either end of them. But there are a fair amount of errors to look for. Now, the corresponding con to that is that it's pretty challenging to look for them, especially when you don't have uncirculated coins, because the errors are often pretty small. They're not really huge errors. They're not like super popping out 1955 penny double die obverse type coins. You're more looking for smaller things, and as such, those errors also, unless it's one of the off-metal ones, probably not going to have the same sort of value premium that a really, really apparent error would have. So just something to think about there. I think one of the neat things is they generally trade it. They're the highest face value, but nobody trades them by their face value, so it's not a super important thing. So that's just something to think about. People say, well, it's 20 times face for silver. So that means if you have two $half, that adds up to $1. 20 times face, that's valued at $20. Nobody really talks the same way about these war nickels, and it's just tougher to and more of a hassle to go through and get to them. And combined with that, combined with the fact that it's challenging to melt these down and really just extract the silver. That's why they do trade at the discount. Lastly, I think the last pro that I would talk about is that you can complete a full collection pretty easily. There's a lot of collectors who like to get full collections, including myself, and you can do the 1942 PS and then the 43 PDS through 1945, and that's like one of the cheapest runs out there. You're hardly paying anything for it, and it can be very fun for a completionist collector to be able to get a full set done. So I think that is kind of an advantage. It can be fun if you're kind of just starting out, or maybe you're showing it to a newer person. Maybe they're a kid. I remember completing mine when I was probably like 11 or 10 or 11 and being excited that I could complete it. It's kind of a personal anecdote there as a collector. But I still think, most of this stuff is kind of in favor of war nickels not being a great way to do silver stacking. It still is kind of a con that these are so discounted, because it's not like you buy the coins at a discount and then when you sell, you get to go have the same high premiums as other types of silver does. Certainly not the case. That is tough to deal with on the way out. I sold like 500 war nickels the other day, and I was selling them at like 94% of their silver value or something like that. So it's a tough world out there for the war nickels, and they're generally not that desired. There's less desire for them, less people are buying them, so it's a much less liquid market, and you have to discount your coins harder to get the people to buy them. So that's just kind of challenging. Like I said, they're tough to melt, low potential for valuable errors. They can also take up a fair amount of space. I mean, that doesn't really, that's not really super valid, but that they have, it's not a ton of silver. It's not like these are 90% silver coins. So the amount of silver versus the amount of kind of total volume of the coin is going to be comparatively low, because it's only 35%. And then lastly, since they are less recognized and less quantifiable, that just makes it another less compelling thing to invest in. I think it's like to wrap it all up, I would say, look, war nickels, they're cool. It's fun to collect a set of them. You can get some nice uncirculated ones at pretty low prices. And you can definitely get a fair amount of silver. I'm sure people will be happy to sell them to you, but they're kind of just a pain to deal with. And they're not, it's not like 90% junk silver, Washington quarters that are 90% silver, or Roosevelt dimes that are 90% silver. It's not like those are so hard to come by where you need to resort to something like war nickels to be able to stack effectively. So I think that there's a lot of things that are just much simpler and more effective and more recognizable, and just take a lot less time than having to deal with war nickels. So there's no reason to go into it. It's not like they're a totally avoid rating, but I would say on like a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of how practical they are, I would put them at like a 3 or 4, maybe above like foreign silver, like a mixed bag of foreign silver. That's probably more of a pain to deal with, though I would argue maybe more interesting. But these, they're not like super, challenging in terms of understanding what they are, from having a cool experience collecting tons of different foreign silver coins. So I would really probably say like these are a 3 out of 10. There's a lot better options out there. But again, I mean, I may have mentioned some things that you maybe didn't think about that you view as a positive, and now you want to start collecting them. So the conclusion is probably avoid. And I always try to provide a lot of information on different coins and currency. And so if you enjoyed, let me know in the comments. Have your own perspective. Maybe you're a big fan and you really only collect war nickels as a silver investment. I would say, that's not how I do it. but I'd want to hear from you. And so I'll look forward to doing just that. Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and definitely subscribe to the channel and connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I also have a website, treasuretownYT.com, where you should go so that you can learn more about coins as well as what's happening on the channel and possibly find a place to sell your coins and collectibles. I also want to talk about some of my other projects like coinmeltprice.com, which shows precious metals prices as well as the melt values of coins containing those precious metals, both US and world. I also have coinsmetalscards.com, which will develop into a full marketplace as well as a news source for coins, metals, cards, as the name might suggest. And then treasuretowncoins.com, which long-term will be my coin dealing entity separate from the channel. And lastly, whatsthegrade.com, which will be a stickering service for already certified collectibles where you can get a approval or verification of the grade on the holder. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you on some of my other videos.